Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is, I don't know, this comforting expectation of precision, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like a clear answer.
Right. You break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line on a black background, and the doctor just points at it.
And it's just boom, broken or not broken.
Exactly. But when you start looking at public health statistics surrounding our modern social lives, well, that metaphorical x-ray machine pulls up images that are genuinely terrifying.
Because they're completely invisible to the naked eye.
Yes. I was actually looking at this data from Dr. Vivek Murthy, the former U.S. Surgeon General, and he concluded something that just, it blew my mind.
What did he find?
He stated that loneliness and weak social connections are associated with a reduction in lifespan that is basically similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wait, 15 cigarettes a day?
A day! It's wild, right?
That is, I mean, that completely shatters the illusion that loneliness is just this fleeting emotional state, like just a bummer of a weekend.
Right, it's not just feeling sad.
Exactly. We instinctively grasp that, puffing through nearly a pack of cigarettes a day physically degrades the cellular structure of your lungs.
Sure.
But to recognize that a state of social isolation inflicts that exact same level of physiological damage. I'm talking elevating cortisol, increasing inflammation, stressing the cardiovascular system. It forces us to treat this as a genuine, measurable health crisis.
Not just a bad mood, which honestly sets the stakes incredibly high for our mission in this deep dive today.
It really does.
We are unpacking a rather profound book by Renuka Gavrani. It's called The Art of Being Alone. Solitude is my home. Loneliness was my cage.
Such a great title.
It really is. And the objective here is not to just, throw out some generic self-care tips about taking bubble baths or whatever.
Right, no superficial stuff today.
No, we are looking to fundamentally rewire how you, listening to this right now, view the time you spend by yourself.
And to do that effectively, I think we really have to start with the core distinction the author establishes super early on in the book.
The difference between being alone and being lonely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because being alone is simply a physical state.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an unavoidable mechanical reality of adulthood.
You literally cannot be around people 24/7.
Right. Loneliness, however, is a psychological lens. It's this framework of misery, self-pity, and perceived rejection that you just place over that physical state.
So it's how you interpret the empty room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So over the course of this discussion, we are going to dismantle the societal conditioning that makes you terrified of that empty room, explore how to rediscover your baseline identity,
Right.
and map out the mechanics of actually turning solitude into an engine for high-level personal growth.
I love that. But before anyone can actually enjoy sitting quietly in a room, we have to examine why society has programmed us to view that room as a punishment in the first place.
Oh, the programming runs deep.
It really does. Gavrani shares this story from her high school that I think just perfectly encapsulates this.
The girl in Section A, right?
Yeah. Yes. So she describes this girl in Section A of her class, which was a massive class, like 150 students.
Right.
And this girl was always physically isolated. She ate alone, sat in the back row to remain hidden, and was universally labeled by everyone as the class weirdo.
Just for sitting by yourself.
Just for that.
Yeah.
And Gavrani points out this absurd but completely accurate reality about that age. She says teenage girls would rather physically hold their bladder all day long than walk down the hallway to the washroom alone.
Just to avoid that weirdo label.
Yes. It's crazy.
It is crazy, but when you look at that behavior through the lens of evolutionary psychology, the absurdity actually starts to make a dark kind of sense.
Really? How so?
Well, for early humans, isolation was a literal death sentence. I mean, if you were separated from the tribe on the savannah, you just couldn't survive.
Oh, right. The predators would get you.
Exactly. So our brains evolved to interpret social exclusion not just as like a social bummer, but as an existential threat.
A literal alarm bell going off in your head.
Exactly. The problem is that this biological alarm system is completely misfiring in the modern high school cafeteria.
Because there are no lions in the cafeteria.
Right. But media and culture hijack that tribal instinct anyway. They constantly reinforce the narrative that the kid eating alone is fundamentally broken and in need of saving.
Which creates the subconscious savior myth, right? We're conditioned to believe that if we are alone, we are somehow defective.
And that we need rescuing.
Exactly. We think our only hope is to wait for someone like a romantic partner bursting through the door or a FRIENDS style ensemble cast hanging out in a coffee shop to just magically arrive, pull us out of the shadows, and fix us.
We treat our own company as a waiting room.
A waiting room for other people, yes. And Gavrani hits us with a really harsh truth here. She says forever is a movie myth.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is, because people move away for jobs, they get married, their priorities shift. Nurturing the false hope that a savior is coming to establish this permanent, unchanging social circle is a uniquely cruel form of self-sabotage.
It really is.
But I do have to say, I struggle with that framing just a bit.
Oh. How come?
Well, if we just establish that humans are biologically wired as pack animals, it feels almost overly cynical to call the desire for permanent connection a movie myth.
That's a fair point.
Because it is biologically agonizing when friends naturally drift away, even if it's just for, career growth or geographic distance. It feels like a genuine loss, not just the loss of a fantasy.
And it is a genuine loss.
Yeah.
The biological drive for connection is very real, and the grief of losing proximity to people you care about is totally valid.
So how does she reconcile that?
What the author is challenging isn't the connection itself, it's the expectation of permanence. She actually uses a Taylor Swift quote that synthesizes this shift beautifully.
Oh, I love this quote.
Right. The scary news is you are on your own now. But the cool news is you are on your own now.
It totally flips the perspective.
Exactly. The suffering you experience when people drift away is compounded exponentially when you view their departure as evidence of your own inadequacy.
Oh, wow. So you aren't just mourning the person.
No, you are mourning the collapse of that savior narrative we talked about.
That makes so much sense.
The liberation she's pointing to happens when you finally stop waiting in the wings for a co-star to define your worth and accept the terrifying but empowering reality that you are the main character of your own life.
That transition from waiting to acting is massive, but it actually brings us to a really tragic consequence of this whole savior myth.
Which is?
Well, because we are so desperate to avoid the weirdo label and so desperate to attract these hypothetical people to complete our narrative, we systematically shed our true personality.
We just mold ourselves to fit the room.
Exactly. We do whatever the room requires. And this leads to Gavrani's definition of true loneliness. She says true loneliness is not the absence of other people.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. She says true loneliness occurs when you can no longer find yourself inside you.
It's basically an identity crisis masquerading as a social deficit. You mold yourself to accommodate so many conflicting external expectations that the core architecture of your personality simply dissolves.
The mechanics of this actually remind me of how a computer allocates memory.
Oh, like RAM.
Yeah. Imagine your brain is a web browser. You meet a new person, and to ensure they validate you, you open a new tab of your personality.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
Right. So you put up one behavioral script for your demanding boss, another tab for your romantic partner, another for your college friends.
And every time you open a tab, you're eating up cognitive bandwidth.
Exactly. You keep running all these different background processes of who you are supposed to be until eventually the central operating system just cannot handle the load.
And it completely crashes.
Total system failure.
And when that cognitive crash happens, and you finally find yourself alone in a quiet room, the terror you feel isn't actually about being alone.
What is it then?
It's the panic of realizing you have absolutely no idea which tab is the real you.
Because there's no baseline script running anymore.
Exactly. So to reboot that system, the author argues for a practice of radical self-acceptance. And she makes a point to emphasize that this doesn't just mean embracing your polite, highly marketable traits.
It means integrating your villain traits, too.
Yes, the dark side.
She is remarkably candid about this in the text. I mean, she outright admits that she is sometimes selfish.
Which is so refreshing to hear.
It really is. She acknowledges that she has actively chosen to prioritize her career over maintaining certain friendships.
And acknowledging that darker, less accommodating side prevents the self-loathing that comes from constantly pretending to be a saint.
Because nobody is a saint.
Right. And to understand why we struggle so much with integrating these different parts of ourselves, Gavrani makes this fascinating observation about how we interact with babies.
Oh, I loved the baby analogy.
It's so good. The universal appeal of an infant is that they lack the cognitive development to judge us by our, what she calls, worldly tags.
Worldly tags.
Yeah, a baby has absolutely no concept of your net worth, your relationship status, your past failures, or your job title.
They just interact with your baseline humanity.
Exactly. But as we grow up, we start substituting our actual identities for these rigid, suffocating tags like Good employee, perfect partner, successful entrepreneur.
And rediscovering yourself requires stripping away all those labels.
But if you're listening to this and realizing your browser has crashed and you don't actually know who you are without those worldly tags, the task of finding yourself can feel incredibly nebulous.
It feels impossible. Where do you even start?
Well, Gavrani offers a very mechanical approach here. She says if you cannot define who you are, start by defining who you are not.
Because psychologically, it is far less taxing to identify what repels us than to articulate our core values from scratch.
Exactly. It's process of elimination.
She illustrates this with a great story about refusing to drink in college. Binge drinking was, the ultimate cool tag.
The easiest way to fit in.
Right, but she drew a hard line because she knew it didn't align with her baseline. And by establishing a firm boundary on what you will not do, you force a shift in your environment.
You instantly raise your standards.
Yes, and the mechanical byproduct is that you automatically repel the people who only liked the fake tab you were previously keeping open for them.
That is such a powerful way to look at it.
You stop laughing at jokes you don't find funny, you stop agreeing with opinions you despise, and you basically carve out the shape of your true self by chiseling away everything you reject.
And this brings us right to the operational phase of her philosophy.
The action part.
Right. Once you chisel away those false identities and close out the exhausting background tabs of people-pleasing, you're finally left with a quiet mind.
You've achieved physical solitude.
And this is a big, but an empty room is just an empty room. How do you harness that unallocated cognitive space without letting it devolve into an anxiety spiral?
Well, historically, solitude wasn't viewed as an anxiety spiral at all. It was considered the ultimate luxury.
Oh,
It was the prerequisite for high-level creative output. Think about Georgia O'Keeffe. She intentionally isolated herself at a ghost ranch in the New Mexico desert just to paint.
Nikola Tesla is another great example.
Yes. Tesla famously asserted that original ideas can only be born in complete seclusion, completely shielded from the influence of other minds.
And Van Gogh managed his own profound psychological misery by channeling it through solitary, obsessive work.
They treated isolation as a laboratory, not a punishment.
And Gavrani translates this historical concept into what she calls focus as a new luxury.
Which is so relevant right now.
Because in the modern digital environment, we treat our cognitive bandwidth with total disregard. She says to think about the mechanics of a car engine.
Okay, a car engine.
If you constantly run a vehicle in the red zone, just blasting down the highway at top speed without ever pulling over to let the engine cool or change the oil, what happens?
The engine seizes up.
Exactly. And we do exactly this to our brains. We constantly flood our minds with input scrolling feeds, playing podcasts in the background, checking emails without ever pulling over to let the brain digest the information.
It's the classic junk in, junk out problem.
Exactly.
And so the engine seizes up. We become fatigued, highly irritable, and completely detached from our own inner voice because the noise from the outside literally never stops.
Which is why mastering the art of boredom is the necessary next step.
The art of boredom. I love that phrasing.
The author introduces this Italian philosophy of dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing.
The sweetness of doing nothing sounds nice in theory.
But it requires sitting with yourself, completely devoid of any external pacifiers, no phone, no ambient music, no reading material, just existing in the void.
See, if you are listening to this, you are probably anticipating the immediate problem with that.
The panic.
Yes, if I just sit on my couch staring at a blank wall, I don't feel a sense of sweetness. My brain instantly starts generating an anxiety attack.
It's like an ambush.
It pulls up an embarrassing comment I made at a party in 2018, or fixates on a deadline I have next Tuesday. How do you endure the silence when your own mind is attacking you?
Well, that initial anxiety spike is actually a well-documented neurological phenomenon.
Really? It's not just me.
Not at all.
Yeah.
When you remove external stimuli, your brain activates the default mode network, or the DMN.
Okay, the DMN.
This is the network responsible for rumination, self-reflection, and yes, intensely worrying about the past and future.
So it's basically the anxiety engine.
In a way, yeah. Gavrani argues that you have to treat this initial discomfort as an act of meditation. The first time you try to do nothing, your DMN will try to drag you into a spiral of regrets.
Because it's desperate for something to chew on.
Exactly. But when you observe that anxious thought arising, you actively take the wheel and steer your attention back to the present. You refuse to follow the thought down into the anxiety spiral.
So it is a deliberate practice of self-mastery. You are basically retraining your neural pathways to tolerate a lack of input.
Exactly. And the magic happens when you endure that initial spike of anxiety and
Mhm.
successfully master the boredom. The brain shifts gears.
What happens then?
The default mode network is actually the exact same neurological system responsible for spontaneous creativity and complex problem solving.
Oh, wow. So you have to go through the anxiety to get to the creativity.
Yes, by enduring the discomfort of silence, you unlock an entirely new level of cognitive processing.
Mhm.
You will suddenly find yourself generating unexpected, wildly creative solutions to problems that your previously overstimulated mind could never have accessed.
So you're clearing the cache so the system can actually run properly.
Precisely.
But mastering boredom is really just clearing the foundation. To make your solitude truly addictive, which is Gavrani's ultimate goal here,
Right.
you cannot just sit staring at a wall forever.
Right, you go crazy.
You have to actively build an architecture for a life that excites you when there's no one else around to witness it.
And the primary pitfall here is the temptation to build a life based on someone else's blueprint. The author insists on brutal honesty. You have to stop adopting society's default definition of a dream life.
Well, we all know the generic checklist.
Oh yeah,
The luxury handbag, the highly curated vacation in Paris, the perfectly posed engagement photos in front of a monument.
Gavrani argues that we often pursue these goals not because they bring us intrinsic joy, but because we know they will elicit a predictable, validating reaction from other people.
We're doing it for the audience.
Exactly. You have to sit down and do the hard work of defining what success actually looks like for your specific, unique baseline identity.
Because if you fail to define your own destination, you just default to living out a script written by marketing departments and social media algorithms.
Which is depressing.
It really is. To break free of that, she offers a highly effective strategic framework. She calls it the one big action rule.
This was easily the most inspiring part of her story.
Same. So in 2020, she found herself at a massive low point. She had quit her job to freelance and just failed completely.
She was depressed, broke, dealing with severe skin allergies.
And watching everyone in her former social circles succeed online.
The standard self-help advice in that situation would tell her to overhaul her entire routine. Fix your sleep hygiene, overhaul your diet, start meditating, launch a new business, all by Monday morning.
Which is a complete psychological trap. Attempting a total lifestyle overhaul when you are already depleted practically guarantees failure.
And that only reinforces the self-loathing.
Right. So instead, she picked one single action. She committed to writing one article a day on the publishing platform Medium.
Just one thing.
Just one. She didn't obsess over analytics. She didn't try to optimize her morning routine. She just executed that one daily action. And 10 months later, she had built an audience of 10,000 followers, which literally laid the groundwork for her career as an author.
The psychology behind why the one big action works is crucial here. It drastically reduces choice fatigue, but more importantly, it creates an undeniable daily proof of a new identity.
She wasn't just checking off a habit.
No, she was systematically shifting her internal identity from unemployed failure to disciplined writer.
That is so powerful.
And crucially, she executed this action in alignment with her own biological reality. She pushed back hard against toxic productivity culture.
Oh, I loved this part because we hear constantly that the ultimate secret to success is joining the 5 a.m. club.
Right, the hustle culture mandate.
Yeah, like if you aren't waking up before dawn to grind, you just lack discipline and you're going to fail.
Well, Gervany actually attempted to force herself into that 5 a.m. mold multiple times and failed miserably every time.
Because it wasn't her.
Exactly. She finally accepted that her chronotype is naturally a night owl. Her cognitive peak occurs late in the evening. By forcing herself to wake up at dawn, she was essentially fighting her own biology.
Making the self-improvement process feel like a brutal punishment.
Exactly. When she stopped fighting her body clock and started writing at night, the friction just disappeared. True personal growth requires working in tandem with your natural rhythms, not adopting someone else's rhythm as some bizarre test of willpower.
Growth shouldn't feel like self-flagellation.
No, it shouldn't.
And that concept of being kind to yourself extends beautifully into how she approaches her leisure time. She details this concept of creating solo joy.
I love how she frames this.
It's amazing she makes her alone time so compelling that she actually finds herself turning down social invitations just because she prefers her own company.
She completely decouples the concept of reward from external social validation.
Right. She realized that she always loved the idea of cozy movie sleepovers with friends, but rather than waiting for people whose schedules never aligned, she just engineered the experience for herself.
Why wait for someone else?
Exactly. If she has a stressful week, she deliberately sets the scene. She dims the lights, lights a specific candle, prepares her favorite pasta and an iced coffee, and watches a Christmas movie entirely by herself.
And she takes solo picnics too.
Packing her crochet and a book, and just sits in a field for hours.
The neurological impact of these solo dates is actually highly significant.
Is it rewiring the brain?
Yes. By romanticizing the actions she takes for herself, she is actively rewiring her brain's dopamine reward system. She is training her mind to associate profound pleasure and safety with her own presence, rather than requiring an external audience to validate the experience.
She even finds joy in the deeply mundane, like taking evening walks in her small, quiet hometown simply to observe the architecture of old doors.
Or just watching strangers go about their day.
Right. She becomes an active observer of her environment rather than a passive participant who's just waiting to be entertained.
And alongside feeding her soul with those curated moments of joy, she is fiercely protective of feeding her intellect.
The Notebook.
Yes, she advocates for maintaining a dedicated notebook titled Feeding My Mind. Every time she encounters a new concept in a book, which, by the way, she elevates as the ultimate honest companions that never flake on you,
Which is very true.
or absorbs an insight from a lecture, she documents it. It serves as a tangible, growing repository of her intellectual expansion.
It reinforces the identity of someone who is continuously evolving, entirely independent of anyone else's input.
Exactly.
When we pull all these threads together, the transformation is staggering. We started by confronting that evolutionary fear of the cafeteria, examining why the biological dread of being the weirdo makes us twist ourselves into unrecognizable shapes.
We looked at the mechanical failure of keeping too many personality tabs open.
Right, and how a cognitive system crash actually forces us to finally close them. We explored the neuroscience of enduring silence through the art of doing nothing.
And ultimately, how to construct a baseline identity strong enough to take itself on a date and actually enjoy the company.
If there's a unifying metaphor for this entire framework, it is the realization that life is a sprawling dinner party buffet.
That's a great way to put it.
If you sit passively at the table, paralyzed by the fear of walking up to the buffet alone, just waiting for a hypothetical savior to place your favorite dish in front of you, you are simply going to starve.
The ultimate act of self-love is getting up, walking to the buffet, and serving yourself.
You have to curate your own joy, define your own metrics for success, and become your own most reliable companion.
Serve yourself. It is a brilliant distillation of the work required.
It really is. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to turn over in your mind.
Okay, let's hear it.
We are constantly told that our modern era is suffocating under a massive loneliness epidemic. We point to Dr. Murthy's frightening statistics about the 15 cigarettes a day, and we immediately blame the screens, the algorithms, and the collapse of local community infrastructure.
Which are all valid factors, sure.
They are. But what if this profound, uncomfortable isolation we are experiencing globally isn't strictly a crisis of connection with others?
What do you mean?
What if, on a macro level, it is an evolutionary forced pause?
Oh, wow. Like a biological demand from our own exhausted, overstimulated nervous systems facing us to finally sit in the quiet.
To finally close the tabs.
Exactly. What if this epidemic is actually a desperate call to strip away the worldly tags, endure the terrifying boredom, and build an inner architecture strong enough to withstand an increasingly chaotic external world?
That is a profound way to look at it.
What if the actual cure to the loneliness epidemic isn't frantically searching for more people to crowd into the room, but finally doing the hard work of learning how to be safely, truly at home with the one person who will never leave it? Something to think about.